Have you ever witnessed an encounter that defied everything you thought you knew about nature? Have you ever seen the improbable happen? Something so pure and unexpected that it made you question your very instincts? Prepare for a chronicle that goes far beyond a simple rescue dot today. We will delve into a chapter of wildlife that stopped the world, where the roles of prey and predator dissolved in an act of compassion that echoed throughout the savanna. Picture the scene: the African sun, scorching and relentless, bathing a vast expanse of golden grass. A cry of despair, a sound that tears through the air and chills the spine, announces that something terrible has happened. Amidst all this natural brutality, a lioness, majestic and powerful, finds herself on her knees, helpless before the tragedy that has befallen her cub. Fate seemed sealed, hope a tenuous thread about to break. But then, when all seemed lost, a gigantic shadow emerges. From the foliage, a figure that, by the law of nature, should be a threat. A gorilla, can you believe it? A mountain gorilla, a solitary, imposing being with a strength capable of bending trees, and who carried his own deep scars. What would he do? Ignore the suffering? Or was there something stronger than the instinct for survival? The answer to this question shocked the world. The lioness begged a gorilla to save her cub, and what he did, well, prepare your heart. We are about to find out now, starting with that instant of terror that froze time in the vast and merciless savanna, where the scent of dry grass and hot dust danced in the air. The lion cub, a miniature of his father, played without a care. His small leaps and chases after butterflies distracted the mother lioness, who watched him with the vigilant and loving gaze of every parent. Life in nature is like this, a constant cycle of peace and danger, and we, from here, sometimes forget how fragile the balance can be. Suddenly, a crackle sent shivers down the lioness's spine, a deep sound, like thunder striking right beside her. An ancient tree, already weakened by time, and perhaps by a distant lightning strike, gave way, falling heavily. In the blink of an eye, the lioness's world collapsed. Her desperate roar echoed for miles, a lament that would make any living creature tremble. There he was, the small cub, trapped under the colossal trunk. You can feel the knot in your throat just imagining it, can't you? The lioness, known for her strength and for being a relentless hunter. Did you know that a lion's bite, although powerful, isn't the strongest in the animal kingdom? Cheetahs, for example, have a weaker bite but surprising agility used every ounce of her energy. She tried to push, scratch, bite the rough wood, her claws sinking into the bark, but the weight was unbearable. Her muscles trembled, sweat mixed with dust, and despair deepened with each failed attempt. Who hasn't felt this helplessness in the face of a problem that seems bigger than us? If you love heartwarming animal stories, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any. With each frustrated attempt, the smell of sweat and earth, dampened by the moisture of her panting body, intensified, mixed with the resinous aroma of the trunk that crushed hope. It was a fight against the impossible. She growled and cried, a guttural melody of pain that only a mother understands. The cub, motionless, breathed with difficulty, and the mother knew that time was running out. In these moments, we realize that not all brute force solves everything. Sometimes, the greatest help comes from where we least expect it, or in this case, from where it seems most improbable. And that's when we ask ourselves, what would you do in her place when your strength was no longer enough? The lioness, exhausted, finally backed away, her body arching in surrender. But it wasn't surrender to fate. It was surrender to her own limitation. Her eyes, once furious, now swept the horizon with a new light, a flicker of desperation that sought something, anything. A light breeze carried the sweet scent of acacias, and with it, perhaps, a premonition. Nature, in its infinite wisdom, sometimes sends us signs, doesn't it? And it was in this silence, broken only by the muffled cry of the cub, that she felt ... a presence. A powerful shadow approached, and the air grew tense. Who could it be? And why was it approaching a lion in trauma? The figure approaching was not a rival lion, nor an opportunistic hyena. It was something much, much more surprising. It was Bakery, a silverback gorilla, majestic in his strength and with an almost human glimmer in his eyes. The scent of damp, earth and dry leaves that accompanied him was strong, but it was the silence he brought with him that was most unnerving. He was known for his reclusive life, a solitary giant who carried a heavy past. Years ago, a tragedy caused by a pride of lionesses had scarred his soul with deep trauma. Who could have imagined that fate would bring him precisely to this scene of feline despair? He stopped, his breathing heavy, and his eyes fixed on the small, helpless cub under the trunk. For the lioness, it was a mixture of terror and an insane glimmer of hope. Her instincts screamed to attack, to protect, but she knew her strength was no match for that colossus. Here's a fascinating fact. Did you know that gorillas are incredibly strong? An adult gorilla can lift more than 10 times its own weight. It's a strength that defies human comprehension, but ironically, it's rarely used for gratuitous aggression, as they are mostly herbivores. The lioness, in an act that broke all barriers of natural enmity, did the unthinkable with her body arched. In painful submission, she lowered her head and instead of growling, emitted a low moan, almost a lament. It was a plea, an entreaty. If you have ever felt the need to ask for help from someone you considered a rival or who caused you pain in the past, you understand the courage of this moment. She was offering him a kind of tacit forgiveness, a truce in the name of a greater good. The air, which before carried the tense aroma of danger, now seemed heavy with raw emotion. Bakery, the gorilla, felt the weight of the lioness's gaze, the supplication in her brown eyes. The memories of his own loss, that old trauma, surfaced like ghosts. Our hearts sometimes hold grudges for so long, don't they? But there, before that alien despair, a seed of compassion began to sprout in his chest. He could leave, turn his back on the lioness and her cub, following what nature expected of him. But what would he do? Would he succumb to the past and enmity, or to something much deeper that was blossoming at that moment? And what would this choice mean for the lives of both of them, and for the fate of the small cub? In that instant of dense silence, which seemed to stretch time in the savanna, Bakery made his choice. Can you imagine the weight of that decision? It wasn't just a trunk. It was the weight of his own trauma, of years of enmity and mistrust, versus the life of a small and defenseless being. With a deep grunt that reverberated through the distant trees, a sound that was not of anger, but of concentrated effort, the gorilla approached the fallen trunk. His incredibly developed muscles contracted under his dark fur, every fiber working in unison. He positioned himself, his gigantic and calloused hands gripping the damp wood. The scent of the forest, of wet earth and moisture, mingled with the wild odor of exertion. Here's a surprising fact. Gorillas, unlike many primates, have very strong and agile opposable thumbs, which give them incredible dexterity, not just for climbing, but for manipulating heavy objects. He began to lift. Slowly, with an agonizing creak of the wood, the oak trunk, heavy as a mountain, began to move. The lioness watched, holding her breath, every cell in her body on alert. It was the help she had begged for, and it was happening with a final, monumental effort. Sweat glistening on his furry brow under the sun, Bakery lifted the trunk just enough. The cub, a tiny patch of fur, slid out, free, though trembling. The relief that washed over the lioness was palpable, almost visible in the air, like a collective sigh from nature. If you have ever experienced that moment when an overwhelming problem is finally solved, that feeling of overcoming, you understand the lightness that filled the lioness's heart. She didn't attack. There were no growls or threats. Just a look. A deep look of gratitude that seemed to pierce Bakery's soul. For Bakery, the act of lifting that trunk was much more than a physical rescue. It was his own redemption. In that moment, the weight of his past trauma, of that resentment towards lionesses, dissipated, replaced by a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. That spontaneous compassion, born from shared pain, healed an old wound. It's amazing how helping others, even those who have hurt us, can set us free. Who hasn't felt that an act of kindness can be a balm for their own soul? But would this newfound peace and this unexpected alliance last in such a wild and unpredictable world? And what would be the next chapter in this incredible story? While the lioness and the gorilla stared at each other in a silence that spoke volumes, a silence charged with compassion and gratitude, a park ranger, Elijah, approached. He was on his daily patrol, his radio occasionally crackling with routine messages, and the smell of gasoline from his vehicle mixed with the pure air of the savanna. Imagine the scene that awaited him. A gorilla and a lioness together, without hostility, before a newly rescued cub. His eyes widened. Here's an interesting fact. Park rangers like Elijah are the front line of animal protection, often risking their lives to combat poaching and rescue injured animals. Acting as true guardian angels of wildlife. Elijah, a man of great experience and a kind heart, assessed the situation. The lion cub, although free, was injured and needed care. The air seemed lighter now, and the soft sound of the breeze through the acacia leaves accompanied Elijah's careful examination of the little one. The most surprising thing was the lioness. She, who should react with suspicion to a human, kept a respectful distance, watching but not threatening. It seemed she understood that there was no malice there, only help. It's amazing how sometimes need and vulnerability open doors to trust where before there was only enmity, isn't it? The cub was taken to a field veterinary clinic, and the lioness, to everyone's astonishment, followed. Bakery's gesture, that act of overcoming and redemption from his own trauma, had transformed not only the fate of a cub, but the perception of all who witnessed or heard the story. The gorilla, in turn, watched the movement from afar, his expression reflecting a newfound peace. He didn't need applause, just that silent relief. We, in our daily lives, often seek recognition, but the greatest reward, like Bakery's, can be the healing that an act of kindness brings us. This story is a powerful reminder of our capacity for forgiveness and compassion. It shows us that even in the face of the greatest adversities and the deepest wounds of the past, the choice to extend a hand, or, in this case, an arm, can change everything. It's a lesson that love and empathy can transcend any barrier, even those imposed by nature. And you, have you ever had a moment when help came from the most unexpected place, or where compassion transformed a difficult situation? What a fascinating story, isn't it? The saga of the lioness and Bakery. The gorilla is a living testament that, however deep the barriers may be, the thread of compassion can weave bridges where before there was only enmity. We saw how a mother's despair and the trauma of a painful past met at a turning point in the vast savanna, culminating in an act of help that redefined what we thought was possible between species. It's a powerful lesson in overcoming, not just for them, but for each of us. Think about it. How many times do we let our own pain or prejudices prevent us from reaching out? Bakery's redemption, born from a simple but monumental act of kindness, shows us that true forgiveness begins in our own hearts, in the ability to see vulnerability in others, regardless of who they are. This story reminds us that life, like nature, is full of surprises, and that love and empathy are forces capable of moving mountains, or, in this case, very heavy tree trunks. pause and feel the beauty of it. The beauty of a world where even the most unlikely enemies can find common ground for life. And you, have you ever had an animal that marked your life with an unexpected lesson? Or witnessed an act of compassion so pure that it made you see the world through different eyes? Share your story in the comments. We love reading your experiences and seeing how wildlife or our own pets teach us to be better people. If this chronicle warmed your heart and made you reflect on the power of forgiveness and overcoming, we are sure that the next adventure suggested by YouTube will move you even more. Don't miss it. Click there and join us for another unforgettable journey.